All. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first annual AMA with Underground Oracle. Jess Penley from Underground Oracle. We're going to be talking today about Harrow, the Blighted Plane. A very, very, very awesome setting that you'll find more about in just a few seconds. But before we get started, Jess, who the heck are you, and how the heck are you?
How dare I? I am Jess Penley, she, her, at Jess Penley on all the socials. I am the co-owner and editorial manager of Underground Oracle Publishing. We are a third-party publisher that right now is focusing on the Cypher system. So,
very, very cool. And yeah, Underground Oracle Publishing is amazing. For those of you who don't know, my name is David Tilstra. I run a D&D 5e podcast, and in that podcast we have used the ever-living shit out of Underground Oracle Publishing and their stuff, and it's always been amazing. It's always fun. So we're very excited to see Harrow and the Blighted Plane and all the stuff that you have coming for that. So let's jump right into it. But before we do that, just real quick, everyone in chat, if you have any questions for Jess, do you want to keep it just regarding Harrow, or do you want to talk about UO
anything.
in general? Anything.
Go for it. UO in general. Yeah, anything, actually. Let's get deep. Let's get real. No, Underground Oracle Publishing in general, Harrow, the Blighted Plane, future mysteries, whatever you guys want to chat about, I'm here to go. I'm here. Ready to go.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Anything and everything. Shoot your questions in the chat, and I'll track them, and we'll get them asked to Jess and the team over at UOP. But first, before we get started here, thank you for being here. Second of all,
yes.
You mentioned that you're switching over to the Cypher system. What does that mean? I feel like that's a pretty big deal for you all, because you've been primarily 5e before this, right?
Yeah, we launched as 5th edition publishers, and we've been doing that for several years now. Found an amazing community, yourself included, a lot of people in the chat, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Loved it. But when all the OGL stuff went down a few months ago, we decided that it was kind of time for us to make a switch. And we had been talking for a while anyway. We have a lot of really big ideas that stretch back like well over a decade, that we were like, we've tabled for a really long time, because we kind of got into this groove of being supplement producers, which we've made a lot of work that I'm incredibly proud of. But with this switch to the Cypher system, because it's much more of a universal system, we're able to put out all these various settings and worlds and ideas that we couldn't really support with 5th edition before. And to be frank, the Cypher system really fits our creative style, like really, really well. It's very narrative first, without, being completely loose mechanically. I like to have some mechanics to play around with, and the Cypher system still has that there. And we can create things, like Harrow, the Blighted Plane, which is going on now, and we can create, any of our various settings that we've been working on for, 15 plus years. Those are all now back in play. And so we kind of took this moment to pivot to being, what we wanted to be originally, which was like setting producers, basically, like, put out our actual worlds to people. So it's been a really exciting transition.
Oh, that's actually super cool. I didn't realize you all were setting, like, world creators at first. I just assumed you were like magic items and spells and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, it makes sense, because like from what I've seen of Harrow, it's very fleshed out and very, very cool.
Yes. Harrow's been around for and we actually created Harrow. Harrow's old. It's like all of our stuff that you're going to be seeing, we've been working on for 15 years, basically, in one form or another. It's just they're now getting to creep up into the light of day. But like a couple years back, we created a micro setting version of Harrow for 5th edition, so it was kind of out there a little bit. But yeah, for the most part, we've been just producing, supplements to other people's worlds, and we were trying to like put in our own lore, which I think we've done a good job of doing with certain supplements, like really expressing what our fantasy world will be like once it's out there, but also still making it where it can fit and slot into other people's settings as well. So now the gloves are kind of off in that way, because we can just throw an entire world out, and then if we want to build supplements specific to that world, we can do that going forward, but we still get to have, our worlds in people's hands, which is very cool.
That's really cool. And I mean, it touches on something you mentioned a second ago, UOP. I mean, you always say you're story forward, story focused supplements, and I mean it shows with everything you've ever done, and it shows with Harrow so far. But before we get too much farther, we're getting a couple questions in chat here, which is awesome. Thanks, chat. Keep them coming. Before we get too deep, what exactly is Harrow, the Blighted Plane? Like what's a general look? Say no one know. Say you're talking to me. I have no idea what it is. I have no idea what the world looks like or what it is. What would be your kind of spark notes? This is what it is.
It's like my pitch. If I was going to pitch it,
yes,
I would say that it is Treasure Planet meets Waterworld in a post-apocalyptic fantasy setting.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and Crystal Punk is something we've been using a lot. It's not as widely known of a genre as like steampunk is, but it's basically very similar in that it's that alternative fantasy subgenre, but instead of like steam and gears, it's crystals and their inherent magics. So there's a lot of that going on too. But yeah, Treasure Planet meets Waterworld in a post-apocalyptic fantasy setting that has like a belligerently hopeful bent. Like we use post-apocalyptic, but these are people that are like they're rebuilding their world and they're excited about it. And it's kind of like they are being radically optimistic about their futures in the face of like all this horrible stuff that happened to them before. So it's positive as well.
That's awesome. I feel like so many things, so many supplements and settings and worlds that just take this really dark sort of evil approach, but like it's cool to hear that positive spin on it. So let's get into the questions here. First from Adam 580. He said, "Why is the plane blighted?" And then quickly amended it and said, "How was the plane blighted?" So do with that what you will.
Well, I will tell you now here, but also we just today released a very amazing podcast set in the world of Harrow. Keith and I worked on it in collaboration with Joel Brigetti of Speaking Stone Studios, who is amazing storyteller. If you haven't heard his podcast before, great guy. But if you go to our Kickstarter page or if you go to our website, it links to it. And the whole introduction is kind of in this really, really awesome, spoken word thing that Joel does. And then he has a story that leads into that too that's set in Harrow. So I definitely want you to check that out. But before you get to that, Harrow was blighted because there was a dynasty of people in control of the entire plane. And they destroyed these massive crystals that were hanging in the sky, forever, since the dawn of Harrow. And when they destroyed that, it caused a lot of planar disruptions and, shifting all around the world. So it's blighted by a power that they call the crystal blight. But it's really just the leftover energy from these massive crystals that used to hang in the skies of Harrow before it was the Blighted Plane.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's really cool. It's like, how did you all come up with like that then, or is that like a crystal punk thing, or was this like is that the crystal energies?
Exactly. Well, crystal punk was an awesome subgenre that we discovered after we had created Harrow, and we were like, oh, we've got crystals all over this. This is definitely crystal punk, But I honestly don't know when we kind of started. If a peek into our lives is that we're basically always bouncing ideas off of each other and building things out in our games and stuff like that. So I cannot 100% tell you when we decided that was the origin of Harrow. That's just how it kind of organically came to be. I mean, it's a storyteller household, so we just kind of go back and forth and build off things, and then it eventually just becomes like the fabric of this thing, and that's what it is. You know what I mean? So
that's awesome. That makes a lot of sense. Another quick question here. This will be a quick one. We've seen a bunch of art. I mean, we can see a little bit of art on the background here and the cover of the book. I have a couple other images I can show here in a second, but Guts McGirt would like to know, who are the artists you are working with on the setting book?
We have a lot of artists. Our featured artist, which is who people have probably seen the most from right now, are Tosca Skelton. She's done the Species, the cover, the picture of the mound runner riding the Gask that was in the adventure that we released to people. So she's done a lot of the art and a lot of the setting of the tone, which has been great. Alex Pushkarev, I hope I'm saying his last name correctly. He has done most of the creatures that people have seen thus far. He's been responsible for doing. And then we have a lot of art that's going to be coming out soon. Bug Hop Studios has done some art for us. A lot of people. Anderson Maya, who's someone who you recognize from a lot of our other stuff. So there's a lot of people on board, but the two featured artists who've done the most work so far that people have seen is Tosca and Alex.
Very cool. I mean, the art from what we've been seeing on Twitter and what we can see on the stream, it's like really it's a very unique look and a very unique setting. There's like mushrooms and like aurora borealis types things and crystals everywhere. Very very cool. Let's see here. Just K has a question. Are those third edition Forgotten Realms books on the wall behind you?
Oh yeah, we have a lot of this is one of our shelves. Yeah, you can see there's a lot of spaces missing because I am either using it as a computer stand or I have them in there by my computer where I'm working on stuff. But yeah, those are definitely we have fifth through third through second edition, and then like all sorts of other role playing books back there and on these other shelves. So.
Amazing. Well, that actually leads to another question. So this is set in the Cypher system. You clearly have played a lot of TTRPGs and a lot of editions. What are some of the things people can look out for in the Cypher system, I guess specifically compared to like D&D? And that might be a bigger question than we have time for.
You know, here would be my pitch to people who are currently playing D&D. Especially with, I think, a lot of people's modern way of playing D&D is very much like is story first, like it's rolled into it. It's kind of turned into where people are like, oh, it's about the experience at the table. It's about you building a story together. It's about, really role playing and, expressing these big ideas and kind of in a collaborative manner. And that's definitely something that can be done with fifth edition, but there's a lot of people that argue, that the rules don't actually focus on being able to do that very well. Whereas the Cypher system is built to do that. So there's a lot of opportunities for the GMs and the players to build that story collaboratively together in a way that is not native to fifth edition, but people have just kind of leaned into themselves organically. And then the other thing that I think is super fucking cool with the Cypher system is that the character customization is you can really really customize kind of and create the character that you really really want. I always struggled with fifth edition because it's like I have this really cool idea for this character, but it's difficult to express within the framework of the archetype that I'm stuck into, and it's as close as I can get, but I kind of have to role play outside of it and around it basically. The archetype really kind of only comes into play like when I'm in combat or something. Yeah. And with Cypher system, even in the way that we have done it, which is, for Harrow, instead of, if anybody actually has experience with the Cypher system, there's a shit ton of like different options that you can pick. And so for some people, you see this and you get a little overwhelmed. So what we did was we created like, 3 types that have like your abilities in it. And there's still a lot of customizations and stuff in it. And even though we limited it, it's still, you have so many options to explore and so much that you can do with these characters, and you can really fine tune it to being what you want it to be. And I think that's really, really cool.
Very cool. I was looking through the Harrow system and I got to the character creation part, and it looked like there was it descriptors and was it clauses? Let me pull it up here. There was descriptors and something else. What are some of the?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So in Harrow, we've added species, so it's kind of like an extra descriptor in a way.
Got it.
I think the core Cypher, you just pick like your type, your descriptor, your focus, and then if you want any flavor or anything. But for Harrow, you have species added in on top of that, so you can play a Kelp, or you can play a gnome, or you can play a chrysalis or a hist or whatever. But there's a lot of different foci in there. There's a lot of descriptors in there. So there's a lot of ways to like make your character. And the way they build it is very story first too, because you like create a sentence like I am a blank who blanks basically. And it's kind of like you're building who you are right off the jump without even really realizing it. It's kind of guiding you in that direction of where you want to go. So
that's super cool. That reminds me a little bit of Quest. If you've ever played Quest, it's very story focused. That's really cool. So that makes me think of 2 questions. But Nicola asked an amazing question here. What Harrow native species would you say Keith from Underground Oracle is? So that's
He's gonna kill me, but I'm gonna say Kelf. Keith has strong Kelf vibes to me, because Yeah, I'm gonna say Kelf. He's gonna watch this and be like, "Why'd you say Kelf?" But it's Kelf. 100% it's Kelf.
Cool.
Take it from someone that knows.
Someone who created the damn thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, from my look at the book, it looked like there was some really really cool species and different character customizations. And you mentioned Hisk and Chrysalis. And my question for you is, why is Hisk the coolest thing in the entire world?
You know what? Um, I'm not. I believe Keith is the one that kind of leaned into the Hisk in the first place because I'm not like, unless it's like a werewolf, which if you know me, I'm really into werewolves, but I'm not like an animal character player, and I know they're out there, so I like doing that. But Keith was very into the Hisk, and he's definitely the one that's responsible for how cool the Hisk is. And then they ended up being like a core part of the lore
Yeah.
of Harrow if you like read the history and stuff. So that's really cool.
Just for the listeners at home, what is a Hisk? And actually, guess what is a Kelf at the same time?
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
So a Hisk is basically a ratkin native to the plane of Harrow. Very, very rad. They started out as being like they're sort of the ones that kicked off the rebellion that led to the fall of the Kataria, which were the people who were in control of the entire plane and all the peoples on it. So the Hisk originally kicked off that rebellion, and then founded a nation called the Karabundi, which was sort of like them trying to flip their lives and their narratives in a way where it was like we had to live in this really harsh environment and we had to be these people that lived this way for so long that we now want our children to experience like a peaceful life. And so they now they're everywhere and they can be anything, but they were it's funny, they were originally the people who kicked off the rebellion, and then originally the people who founded like the big hippie commune place. So and the Kelves. So for those of you who haven't read any of Harrow, the Kataria, which were the dominant beings on the plane, would reach out and grab other races and species around the plains, basically. And then they would use transmutation magic and these artifacts that they have to alter them in different ways. So none of the species on Harrow are kind of the same as they would be anywhere else. They've basically been turned into these different things. So Kelfs were originally elves from other places. They were brought to Harrow by the Kataria. The Kataria saw within them this potential for like empathy and things like that. So they sort of dug into that and magnified those abilities. And then they ended up becoming kind of like their favorite little pets in a way. And so their name kind of became a derivative of the Kataria. So they went from being elves to Kelbs, and the Kataria really, really loved that. So it started out as being kind of a derogatory thing from other people, but then it was kind of just put on them as being like, oh yes, they are more like us than any of the other races. So
That's very cool. Like I've said many times, and I'll probably say it a bunch more times throughout this stream, the amount of story you are all able to put into the races, the settings, the locations, the spells, everything. It's amazing. Cool. And you said something that made me think here. You said it was a fun one to play test out. Is that how you all come up with a lot of this stuff? You just literally sit down together and play these games, these stories, or is it like a writing thing back and forth? Like, I want to write this sort of story. Ooh, let me add this. No, that isn't very good. Like, is it like a writing thing, or do you all sit down and actually play test these different things out?
It's a really awesome combination because it will be like it started out with the role playing, because before we ever decided we were going to create stuff, we were creating stuff just for our own table, and Keith was the forever GM and I was the forever player, and we just played off of each other really well. So we would build these really cool things in world, and then they would just be sitting at our table, with nowhere else for it to go. So originally, it started with the role playing, and it's still kind of how it starts with a lot of stuff. But then after the games are done, we'll kind of retire back to our, table and be like, oh, that was really cool. What if, this was the reason for it, or this, and then build an entire, lore web around that, connecting to everything, and then, bring it back to the table next week and try it out again and see how it works. And yeah, so it's a combination.
That's awesome. I mean, I can't think of any other way to like make very efficient or like just good fitting things for these TTRPGs, because I feel like if you have too much of just like one side of that coin, it wouldn't work. But I feel like y'all have made a way to make it work really well. So that's rad.
I think it's because we focus on the story before anything else. And then if anything needs to be created mechanically, then we look into how can the mechanics serve the story that we have in mind, and how can we make it so that it still fits within this game that we've decided to play in. But it's always the story first, and because we always go with that, it gives us a really clear like path of where we're going and what the priorities are.
Mm.
And I like mechanics and things like that, so it's not difficult for me to take these like very weird pie in the sky ideas that
Mm.
Keith might have or that we might generate together, and then like turn them into something serviceable mechanically to the idea. And every now and then things have to change because Keith is an incredibly creative person, and sometimes he wants shit that's just not possible in any framework. We figure it out, but
His power is too strong.
great, yeah,
Cannot be contained by any system.
yeah.
Super cool. I love talking to people about this kind of stuff. Just like seeing people's creative process and like seeing the product of it is very exciting. So let's get back into some other questions here. Once again, chat, if you have any other questions, shoot them in the chat and I'll write them down. We have a couple here. One that I asked you a little bit before we started, Jess. I'm gonna put you on the spot now.
Okay.
A question from myself. If Harrow was an ice cream, what flavor would it be?
That's such a such a hard question because it really means almost nothing, but that makes it all the more difficult.
No, it absolutely means nothing. Mm-hmm.
You know what? I'm gonna go with I am gonna go with rainbow sherbet.
Rainbow sherbet. We have rainbow sprinkler in the chat. Also rum raisin. So yeah, you were right on the money with it. Rainbow sherbet.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So we've talked a lot about the species and sort of the history of Harrow. What about like the actual like location itself? What can people sort of expect to see from the Blighted Plane itself? Like, are there cities? Is it just a big crystal? Like, what are we looking at here?
So the Plane of Harrow consists of the four nations, which are the four settled areas, basically, four countries, if you want to. The mound is kind of the primary launching point for most people. It's this massive like vertical city that's just a bunch of people stacked on top of each other around this huge stone spire. And it's where people do most of their launching out for adventures into the Blighted Plane. On the water sands, which if you guys don't know, I probably should have mentioned that the whole plane is dominated by the sea of sand.
Whoa.
Which happened after the crystals were destroyed, which they called the Triad. So after the cataclysm, the seas all turned to this sand, and so they use sand ships to navigate everything. So it's very, very cool and fun to play these like sand ship games. But so the mound is one of the four nations. There's the Karabundi, which I talked about a little bit, which these are the people that, much more peaceful. Their area is much, a little more spread out, earth houses, communal living. They're kind of a society of people that really try to be one with the plane more than like fight against the aspects of it. Then there's the Icea. Icea is the most technologically advanced area, the wealthiest area, in that they still have a lot of the old world materials left, and they're kind of a nation that kind of clings to that bureaucracy and order that existed under the Cataria's dynasty. So they have kind of turned that into their own thing. And there's the Cane Armada. And the Cane Armada are a constantly traveling group of ships, massive, massive ships. And it's just a nation of people that live this nomadic lifestyle on these ships. And at one point, the nations kind of fought with each other, but it's in an area of peace right now because they realize they kind of have to deal with each other in order to, move forward. So those are the four nations. And then there's the Great Oasis, which is this massive, sprawling fungal jungle, basically. All the plant life on Harrow is it's varied, but fungi are the predominant plants on the plane. So the Great Oasis has like all the important materials that the people of the four nations need. It's also got a lot of really like fucked up wildlife and stuff. It's very, very cool. And then there's the Lucent Wastes. The Lucent Wastes are where the most toxic levels of blight energy are. So there's a lot of more toxic creatures that live out that way. It's also where you're going to find the most Kataria ruins and pieces of old technology left over. So it's a really cool place to adventure, but not a cool place to live. And then there's this occurrence that happens called the shifting gyre, which basically is this massive portal that opens up in the water sands sporadically, and it either sucks things in or it will spit things out, but it always stirs up the water sands dramatically. And what that will often do is it will bring up these things called risen runes or risen oasis. So the topography of Harrow actually changes basically at the GM's discretion, because
Whoa.
these islands can come out of nowhere, and who knows what is going to be on them. They could rise up and it could have like some really pristine piece of Kataria technology in this building that people never imagined they would be in, that almost feels like science fiction to them.
Mm.
Or it could be another, wild area full of all these weird unknown creatures or anything. So there's a possibility, or a planar rift could happen and something else could come through. So there's a lot of possibilities for things to like change and deviate from game to game. It's very, very cool.
That sounds so cool. I mean, I can already see like the story, like possibilities, just in the shifting sands and stuff. That's amazing. We have another question here that's kind of in line with what we were just talking about from Mimics and Misfits. Is there a part of the world you would want to hang out in specifically?
Yes, the mound.
The
The
mound. Okay.
mound I fucking love.
Mm.
It's full of just like frenetic, crazy trash people that are like always like
Just a bunch of
and really,
raccoons.
yeah, it's a bunch of, but it's funny because it really is like they are, as much as like some of the other nations might have their opinions about them, they're really, and we include it in the thing, they're the beating heart of Harrow. Like it's where all the activity is. It's where you're going to see most of the people of the four nations mixing. I mean, it's this like giant melting pot, and it's people using these reclaimed materials to build these massive like buildings on top of each other, and going out on these gathering missions and coming back, and it's the whole, I think the vibe of the mound I love, but I also think it's perfect for Harrow.
That's honestly, as you were describing those four nations, I kind of got distracted because I was like, these all sound so cool. What'd you say, the Armada,
The Lacane Armada.
that speaks to my soul. I'm a big
Yeah.
big pirate fan, so hell yeah. Another question from Guts McGirt here. Will there be player specific lore? Will there be a player specific lore section apart from GM lore for the book?
Yes. The whole core book is together, but one of our stretch goals is to release digital only players handbook, which is just the player specific stuff kind of stripped out so that people don't have to like look through. But as far as like there's lore for the types, there's lore for the species. So there is specific player facing lore, but yes, as far as the core book goes, it's, kind of interspersed with the lore of Harrow itself, so that you get a feel of the nations and what life in Harrow is like.
Very cool. You mentioned it a few times. You've mentioned the creatures. That's another question I was wondering about. Have you all made specific monsters, or are there specific monsters players and GMs should look out for? And then follow-up question, what is the most badass monster in Harrow that is going to kill all the players?
So there's a lot of opportunities to die. It's an optimistic setting, but it's definitely one, if you want to go out and get yourself killed, it's a super easy place to get killed in. Because even the creatures that aren't like super toxic, they're still trying to eat. And at the end of the day, you are luscious and delicious, and they would love to have that. So definitely a lot of dangers out there. My personal favorite creature isn't even the most dangerous. I just fucking love the idea so much. And then Alex killed the art for it. I think I've shown off on Twitter like a million times. But it's Scrawl, which they're these swarming toads, and you almost have to fall into them for them to actually be dangerous. But once you do, they'll just eat you like piranhas. Like they're absolutely.
Oh, that's amazing.
So they're amazing. Yeah, so
Piranha
I can't wait
toads.
for people to have stories of being like, oh, I got my players with some fucking Scrawl. It was amazing, because it will be amazing. But like the big bad, like there's a creature called the Crichton, which Keith designed, and it is basically like a kaiju, basically. So like if it's coming, the nation has to prepare. Basically, you kind of have to like use your ship to ship weapons on this guy, because he's not fucking around. So I would say he's going to be the one that people will be like, oh fuck the Crichton, that you can use like once a campaign and get away with. But there's so many super cool creatures that myself and Kayla and Keith have designed that I'm excited for you guys to see.
Oh, that's so cool.
Scrawl's my favorite. I didn't even make them, but it's my favorite.
I mean, that sounds like one of the things I've loved about UOP, Underground Oracle. is like around Twitter, like just seeing the different stories of like, oh, this is how I use the prongs of the black, or this is how I use Mama Bardosa. Like, so I'm excited to hear this new, like,
Yes.
oh yeah, Skrull just ate my entire party. That's gonna be absolutely nutty. Super cool. Oh my gosh, I'm getting very excited for this. Getting back to sort of the location itself, 'cause we've talked about some people, we've talked about some locations, we've talked about some monsters. What about like transportation mechanics? Because you've mentioned Treasure Planet. We've seen a couple pictures of these sort of sand surfers. Are there any specific mechanics for basically being his name is escaping me, but the kid from Treasure Planet with his
Yes,
hoverboard?
absolutely. Because I wanted to be him when I was a kid.
Yes, everyone did. Oh my
Wanted to be
gosh.
Jim. Yes,
Mm.
there is, and the Dune Leaper was there. There, we modded an existing folk guy from Monty Cook Games, part of their SRD, and originally I believe it was made for driving.
Mm.
But we altered it to be like tears across the water sands, and basically so you can be that badass on the Dune Leaper, like outrunning the pirates and like doing rad tricks and
Mm.
looking awesome. So that would be it. The tears across the water sands
Ooh.
would be the one that you'd want. But Monty Cook Games, which again, love the system, love the community,
Mm.
and the actual publishing company has been really generous with third party people. But their SRD has like nice ship mechanics that we were able to utilize in there, which again focus on story first, so you're not getting bogged down by looking at like 5 foot squares and things like that. It's able to like have this really fun and exciting moments and still feel like, you know, you've got the mechanics there with you, but they're not like hampering you wanting to do anything.
Super cool. I mean, again, we've said it 1,000 times. Like, that's what TTRPGs and this sort of group storytelling is all about. And I feel like you all over at Underground Oracle Publishing do that so well. Like, it just so many awesome stories, so many awesome supplements. Y'all are out there, and it's amazing.
Quick
Um,
update: we are at $6,879 of
yo,
our 7,000.
less than what is that one? Less than $150, and we'll make that goal. And I said on Twitter, if we cross the goal in the next 15 to 30 minutes, we'll be running some games for you all, because we want to make this happen. It's so exciting. Actually, I'm gonna drop the link again real quick. Harrow. Okay, so let's get back to it. We've talked about monsters. You've you don't have to answer this question, but I did write it down. What is Harrow's favorite color? And again, we don't have to get too deep into that one.
All the colors. I'm gonna say electric blue.
You heard it here first. Harrow's favorite color is electric blue. Um, we talked about this a little bit earlier, and I think we have some new folks in the chat now. What are character creation with the Cypher system and Harrow? Um, how is that going to be? I remember you mentioned something about it. Basically, you like write a sentence,
Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah, it's a really intuitive way to. And if you look at the character creation section that we have in the quick starter in the book, or you know, uh, it walks you through basically filling out that sentence. So you decide what you want your type to be. Um, we have 3 types, and with different options you can select at your different tiers. For Haro, we have the Shrieker, which is kind of like the warrior types. So you're like the, you know, the wasteland badasses. There is the Blight Slinger,
Mm.
which Blight Slingers are people who are able to manipulate the crystal blight energies in the world. It's not so much being like a wizard or a sorcerer, almost as much as it's like being a someone who is able to utilize psionics in like a
Mm.
sci-fi world. Like it's a much more tactile thing. Like you're like it's a much more, you know, it's less like it's less wizardy and much more like I have to really like struggle to do this thing, but you get to do these really cool things. Like you can instill lingering blight in people, you can heal lingering blight. So I mean, blight slingers are like really admired and really feared in the setting. And then there's the rovers, which are kind of like the bread and butter. They're like your jack of all trades. Your gatherers are primarily going to be like rovers and stuff. Which if you, in the setting of Harrow, gatherers are what they call the people who are willing to venture out for their nation or for themselves to like risk their lives in these scenarios to bring back resources or treasures or whatever. Gatherer is the kind of the generic term for that. So being a gatherer is something that people are like, oh, you're like a cool cowboy, but some people might think you're an idiot because you're out there risking your life every day, but you're also a necessary idiot, so no one's ever too mean. But yeah, so there's the three types, and then we have descriptors aplenty, which kind of describe your character like cruel or vicious or intelligent or something like that, and those all come with their own abilities that you get. We have our species, 5 species. We have, and then there's the foci, which we have a lot of different focuses, which you can, everything from needs no weapon, which means you can fight with your hands, which is always my favorite thing, or tears across the water sands, or howls in the wastes, or like all these different things. So there's a lot of options to choose from when you're making your character, and it's a really intuitive process once you dig into it.
Like I love D&D, but it seems like there's so many other options for character creation, and it feels like there's a lot more story focused ways to do character creation. Are those all those are all classes or foci that you all have made? Like that wasn't from
The bulk of the foci were things that we adjusted for the setting from the SRD.
Okay.
Just because creating 20 foci from scratch when there were already very serviceable ones available, that we just had to modify slightly to make sure that they fit within the setting and that the lore fit. We've made a couple of our own, definitely, that you'll see in there. But yeah, the bulk of them are tailored to Harrow, but they're available in the SRD.
Super cool. So I missed a question here. DeGonzo wants to know more about the spiky toads.
Don't we all?
Don't we all? So, yeah. If there's any other thing we can say about those spiky toads, great. If not, we'll move on.
I'll spin up some more about the spiky toads.
Cool.
So they're big pains in the asses because like a lot of the creatures really are locked to running into them either in one of the oases or out in the wastes or in the water sands or whatever. And the Skrull are one of those rare creatures that you can pretty much find anywhere. They are a hazard all over Harrow, and they're not important enough to always be in the front of people's minds, but when you run into them, you're like, fuck, I forgot about these guys, and they just will tear you up. It's amazing. I love them.
Just whirlwind of death.
And I don't know if you've seen the art, and you don't have to follow me, but go to my Twitter profile, look at the Skrull. They look so happy in the picture that Alex drew. Just like they're having the times of their lives fucking people up, and I love it. It's great.
Amazing. So another question that we have for you: is Harrow the Blighted Plane part of a bigger world, or is this it? Or can you talk about that?
So here's what I will say. Okay. It is a standalone setting. At the beginning of the book, kind of after the introduction, we talk about ways that you could involve Harrow in other settings. So it's very possible that, they fell through a planar rift and ended up here from your fantasy setting currently. And so people are going on a quick jaunt. Or it could be a, planet in the rift somewhere that you guys crash landed on, and it's this like weird sci-fi planet. Or you could have accidentally gotten here from the modern world again because of weird planar hijinks. So it's a standalone setting, but there are ways for you to travel to it from your current Cypher setting if you so choose. Whether or not we have bigger overarching plans for it on the UOP publishing end, I'm not at liberty to say. But I will say that it is a complete standalone setting that is still accessible from whatever you're currently playing.
Super cool. So just a little update. We're at $101 away from the from the goal here. So let's keep asking some questions. See if we can entice some folks into donating some more money to this. Because if y'all are here hearing this is going to be an amazing setting, and y'all are going to want to go fight some spiky toads and a kaiju monster. So I've already asked the best question, the ice cream question. You talked about this a little bit, and feel free. I'm not trying to get you to spill all the secrets of the book. Okay. But you talked about the blight spreading. Is that going to be? How do I phrase this here? How did the blight spread? First of all, you mentioned it was the crystals. Okay, here we go. Is there a way to stop the blight from spreading? Is that something we can look forward to?
So the crystal blight is sort of just the term that the people of Harrow call the energy responsible for all the fantastical things. High levels of it can be very dangerous to people. So it can mutate you, it can make you sick, and so it's dangerous. But it's also the thing that provides people with like healing abilities or these items that people can use to better their society. So the crystal blight is like this constant double-edged sword,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like we love it, but we also hate it. It's incredibly dangerous. There are ways to stop the blight in that, like if it hurts somebody, or if you become contaminated with this version of the blight, there's definitely ways to stop it,
Mm-hmm.
from like tinctures that the people of Pardo have developed, which are not fun to get out of your system, to going to a blight slinger who is able to like physically pull it out of you. So it's definitely an option. It's also an option to play as a cool crystal blighted mutant if that's your thing. As long as you don't mind some sideways glances, that's always on the table. And running into creatures that are even further mutated versions of what's presented in the plane. So yeah, you might run into Skrull, but then your DM might be like, "Oh, it's not normal Skrull. These are Blightborn Skrull, and they have all these extra fucking abilities that nobody saw coming." So I mean, there's a lot of really cool options to pepper in there. So the short answer is yes, there's a way to stop like
Mm-hmm.
these bad manifestations of the blight. But as far as the crystal blight in general, it's just now sort of this energy that runs through every aspect of the plane. So it's kind of, holding things together in a way.
That's awesome. Um, Real quick, I missed another question here. Adam asked, Jess? What is your favorite game that Keith has run?
Oh fuck, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Again, because we've been playing for fucking ever.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's been so many good ones. Yeah, I'm gonna say, and this is incredibly selfishly, because it's not even. I don't think it's definitely. I don't even know if it's the best story. They're all
Mm-hmm.
amazing stories,
Of course.
but I got to play like my favorite character in a campaign that we played recently, where I was playing a Riot-born sorcerer,
Mm-hmm.
and I was from this group of skirmishers called the Furies, and this from this country that we have of mercenaries called Shatura. I'm just dropping lore in the thing that no one knows anything about. It
It's
only means anything
amazing.
to me
It's
right
amazing.
now. You'll know in a few years. But no, but that was probably my favorite game, because I got to play this very angry melee based sorcerer, which was fucking awesome. And if you know anything about me, you know that I will always punch things I'm able to, no matter what character I'm playing. So
Perfect. Well, we have an addendum to the question. I read it wrong. Dyslexia is
oh,
fun. What is your favorite Harrow game that Keith has run?
okay. So funny enough, this is not. I wasn't playing a punchy character. I was playing like a smooth talking. I was playing a charming human rover who tears across the water sands because I
Mm,
wanted to be Jim Hawkins.
of
So
course.
and I was a mounder, and we started this independent scrap house to like go out and explore Harrow, and I got to do all this really cool character development, and it was an amazing time. But the best parts of it were doing all the very rad stuff on my Doom Leaper, while everybody else was on like the sand skimmer next to me. I got to kind of lone wolf it and be like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, you're like jet fighter moment.
Super cool. I mean, that makes me think of. Do you all have? So this is the setting. This is the rules. This is sort of like the overview of Harrow and the Blighted Plains and the world itself. Do you all have like one shots or adventures or pre-made stories that people can experience in this plane?
Yes, we do.
All right.
The core book will 100% include one full adventure, and two shorts, which I don't know if everyone here is familiar with Cypher shorts, but Cypher shorts are these very cool things that you can either play stand alone, so you just like quickly whip up these characters to play in this one shot session, or you can kind of use them to run a one shot with existing characters that you have in your world. So the core book will have two Cypher shorts, so two one shot scenarios set in Harrow, and then a full adventure. If we hit a funding goal, we will unlock another full adventure. And then we also have a set of 3 Cypher shorts set in Harrow that you can get as an add-on right now as a part of the campaign.
Awesome. Speaking of funding goals, we are now at 6,924. $76 away from hitting that goal. Super, super awesome. One more question here from Nicola. What made you choose drive-through for printing, and what does POD code mean for the tiers that include physical copies? I mean, I know, but I'm trying to think of questions. LOOOOOL. Thank you, Nicola.
Honestly, I went with drive-through because we already were there. The people who run it are frankly delightful. They've always been very helpful to me, and whenever we've needed help. Also, we were able to set goals to make the book bigger this time by doing print-on-demand codes, so we could reduce the cost that you guys are paying because we don't have to guesstimate how much final production is going to cost. We'll just, so we can do this flat rate for you guys now, and then you can just pay for either the soft cover or the hard cover with shipping later. So it allowed us to do things like set goals where we can add in more creatures, we can add in more ciphers, we can add in more adventures. Whereas if you're kind of dealing with print production on your own, you don't have that much wiggle room because you could end up fucking yourself because you make a book that's too expensive for people to buy and for you to afford to publish.
All right, well, build a little bit of those like kind of safety nets in there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
From Fuji Yo Mama, sorry if I totally messed that up. Can people that control the blight control blighted creatures? Most importantly, the blighted toads.
Yes.
Whoa! Dang,
Yeah.
okay.
If you so choose, another cool thing, like even if you and I both pick Blightslinger as our type, everything else would still be so varied. And I might be a Blightslinger that has decided to go the way of like instilling blight into somebody, and you might be the Blightslinger that's like, I want to control the toads, and that's a completely valid option that you can choose as being a Blightslinger. But yes, toad control is on the table.
Toad control is on the table. Love it. Kind of going back to our last question, Tellurian wants to know if that system of the Kickstarter, if that'll help with delays as well.
Yeah, it's definitely going to mitigate that. I have, as you can see from our profile, this is our second Kickstarter created, but I've backed like 98 of them. So I've been I've been personally a part of a lot of Kickstarters. And a big part of delays always come from those last minute production things. So we will be able to get things out to you guys much sooner than we would have if we weren't doing the print on demand method.
I mean, that makes sense. And I feel like that it's just safer for everybody instead of, like you said, printing 5,000 books costing a ton of money. It's more of an on-demand thing. I think that's very smart. Chat, any other questions to drop? I got a few more here, but if you all have questions, don't forget to drop them in the chat. I'll try to catch them and get them answered here. A question here for you for the Harrow setting. Are there sort of the standard species, races that you would find in a normal TTRPG, like elves, dwarves, whatever? Can you find those types of races and classes and stuff here in Harrow, or is it all brand new stuff from UOP and Cypher?
So this is also a part of which when you read the book, you'll read it. But so there's the core 5 species of Harrow, which are the Hisk, the Chrysalis, the Kelfs, humans, and gnomes. Now they've all been altered a little bit. If there's anything recognizable, human, gnome, and Kelf are very recognizable to people, but they have been altered, so they're different on Harrow than they would be on any other setting. But because of all the planar hijinks that happen all the time, you can introduce other species that you'd like to the game, and that wouldn't be an issue. We even mentioned offhand, that there are people who claim to have been from other planes or to have been from other worlds that are now here, and they're kind of like these lone people. So you might be the lone tiefling that is wandering around the mound somewhere. And people might just think that you're some sort of Blightborn mutant or something. To them, you could be a weird-looking human or a weird-looking, whatever. But actually, I'm from, the Sword Coast or whatever it is that you people play.
Super cool. Is there anything else you want people to know about Underground Oracle and more specifically Harrow? But as we're kind of winding down here, what what do you want the people to know? What are the hard hitting questions that you want people to know about this?
We've gone through the setting of Harrow pretty thoroughly, which I'm stoked about. This has been a labor of love of
Mm.
mine and Keith's for quite a while. Now we've onboarded Kayla, and she's adding in all of her awesome stuff into things. This is our first non D&D project and our first setting, so this Kickstarter is very, very exciting and a lot more demanding than our previous work has been. But we're incredibly excited to get it out in front of everybody. And if you like what you have seen of Harrow so far, most like the quick start was 88 pages long, but the way our production model works is we fund everything through Patreon. For as low as $3 per month, you get to have our new setting quick starts, which will give you the ability to play test and play in these worlds before they're ever made public. So people who are part of our Patreon have had the opportunity to play in Harrow for a few months now. And they've been able to see all the stuff before it comes out. They've been able to look at the shorts. They've been able to look at, the adventures, etc. We'll be starting a new cycle with a new setting as soon as Harrow wraps up. So if you join our Patreon, you get to be on the ground floor of the next setting that we're going to be doing, which I have been given the okay to say is high adventure science fiction.
Ooh.
So if that's your bag, definitely worth checking us out. But yeah, we are just so appreciative of you and all of you that are supporting us, both our Kickstarter and our Patreon and just our Discord community and helping us spread the word. We're very thankful that we have all of you behind us and at our back. And to be quite honest, that's what gave us the wherewithal to make the abrupt switch that we did, because we knew that we had a great community around us that, basically we thought we would lose a lot of people, but you all came through and you supported us and made this transition with us. And it's been an amazing experience. So just want to tell you all, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, couldn't have said it better. Thank you so much, Jess, for coming on here and talking to us about Harrow. I'm super excited about it. It sounds like there is some really, really amazing stuff for players and GMs to experience, and some really awesome stories that are about to get told. So unless there's anything else, if that feels like a pretty good spot to finish it. We're close. $6,924, $6,924. We're very close to that $7,000
right there.
goal. But I mean, I think we've made a couple $100 while doing this. So
Definitely
pretty
up there. So
pretty sweet.
Thank you again.
Of course, thank you, chat, for the questions. Thank you, Keith and Jess, for making all these amazing worlds. Once again, Jess, where can people find you all?
You can go to undergroundoracle.com to check out all of our Underground Oracle stuff. We have links there to our new podcast that just dropped. So check that out. Joel does an amazing job. It's also got links to our Kickstarter, links to all of our social links there. I am at Jess Penley on all the socials. I'm on Twitter more often than I should be. And you can always jump into our Discord community. We have an amazing Discord community. We run contests. We do all sorts of stuff. So it's just an amazing group of people. So I recommend that you check that out.
I would also recommend you check that out because it's a lot of fun. Keith and Jess are not only amazing creators, but they're just amazing people, and everybody should love them and follow them and support them with everything they got. But that's it. That's Harrow. That's the Blighted Plane. I mean that's a look into it, because I feel like there's so much more we didn't even touch on. But once again, thank you, chat. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Keith. I know you're probably close by. Yeah, thanks for hanging out, everybody, and we'll see you all soon. Maybe. I don't know. Who knows? I don't even know what's going on anymore. But anyway, catch you all later. Thank you so much, Jess. Everyone go support Harrow. Bye.